Welcome to today's webinar. As I've said previously, we are going to look at the Property Maintenance Operative Apprenticeship Standard, looking at the new version and some key changes that are coming, and also comparing to the previous one. This is today's agenda. So we'll start by, I'll introduce you to myself and the rest of the construction team who unfortunately aren't here today. Then we'll look at the changes that have already occurred on version 1 of the apprenticeship standard, as well as looking at the new version 1.1 and comparing any differences that have come through. And then after that is the formalities of if you'd like to work with us and what we've got coming in the future. So, by way of some introductions, my name is Jason Howe. I am a technical advisor here at City and Guilds for construction and the built environment. I do work with a number of colleagues in construction, mainly Paul Brown, who's also a technical advisor for construction, and Ian Roberts, who is a technical advisor for construction, but just in Wales. We've worked very closely with our industry managers, whom we have Richie West and Nick Taylor. And finally, just by way of introduction, we work very closely with what we call our sales champion, who is Laura Harrop, who is our sales champion for construction. Laura operates in the North East and Yorkshire. So if you are in those areas, do keep an eye out for Laura. Just so you know as well, you will receive a copy of the slides, and eventually you will get a copy of the recording. The recording will go on to YouTube, so you'd be able to access it from there as well. Following on from that, just to let you know, there is a number of ways in which you can get in touch with us at City and Guilds. There is the construction email address, construction@cityandguilds.com, and that gets managed by myself and my colleagues, so that comes straight through to us. You can also join us on LinkedIn. We have a construction group on LinkedIn, and it currently has, I think that's actually now over 400 members. And it's a decent community where it's another opportunity for us to share information with yourselves and others. You can also find us on Twitter, although we're not as active on that as we are on LinkedIn. You may want to visit our Eventbrite page also, because whenever myself and my colleagues do networks or certain types of events, we do advertise them via the Eventbrite page. And then lastly, we do have a channel on GoToWebinar where you can access all of the previous construction webinars that we may have delivered in the past few years. We are moving away from GoToWebinar, so the longevity of that link and using that platform is going to stop shortly. So everything else will eventually go onto YouTube. One of the things we do at City and Guilds is we try and produce good newsletters, and there's always some information to portray, whether it's stuff you've seen on social media or any key events that we've got coming up. And to do that, we put it in the newsletter. Now, this usually comes out 2 or 3 times a year. And within that newsletter also, we like to showcase our providers, big or small, doesn't matter. If you've got some great success stories or some information that you want to start and shout about, please do let us know. Or if you've got any sort of key relationships with employers, again, please do let us know, and we can include it in our newsletter and showcase that to all of our readers and subscribers. Also, the construction webpage has so much more information on. This is where you will find the new PMO Apprenticeship Standard. It was in a different area previously, but it is migrating and moving into the construction webpage under the EPAs, where all of the other construction EPAs are housed. So please keep an eye out for that. Once that piece of work and the migration has happened, an email alert will be going out to inform you of the new location for that for the property maintenance apprenticeship. So just as a bit of a recap, really, looking at some of the already changes that have happened to version 1.0, and this occurs to any learner with a start date prior to the 3rd of January 2023. So there's there's no need, or learners no longer need to complete the level 2 diploma qualification, and they would do a portfolio of evidence in line with what the other construction apprenticeship standards have. However, if you don't register the learner for the on-programme qualification, you're not able to utilise the Sitting Guilds documentation to support your evidence or the research assignment. There's been some amendments to the requirements to assess some of the knowledge and skills related to water hygiene, and they're on the screen. I'm not going to read it word for word. And the same for electrical systems as well. So in short, the removal of maintaining water hygiene has been removed, and also electrical tasks within the EPA have also been removed. And this is just for version 1. So this is any learners that you've had start prior to the 3rd of January 2023. So looking at the new apprenticeship standard, just by way of a sort of a high level overview, it is version 1.1. It's still level 2, but the duration has increased. It's now 24 months, and the EPA period is still typically 3 months. Funding has also increased. That is now 14,000, and it sits within the construction and built environment route. It was updated on the 3rd of January 2023, and that's where you need to be aligning your ILR start dates and understanding which version of the apprenticeship standard your learners need to be on. With regards to the assessments, as previously, you have the knowledge multi-choice question test. You also have the practical, and that also has questions within that as well. And then finally, there is the interview. So the 3-stage assessment is still familiar to learners that have already, with people that have already done and worked on this apprenticeship standard. Looking at the portfolio of evidence, because we will get a lot of questions on this moving forward over time. So what does the portfolio of evidence typically look like? The first thing you've got to remember is this portfolio of evidence is for your learner, your employer, and yourselves. And it will typically contain 12 discrete pieces of evidence, and it must be mapped against the KSBs. And any evidence that you can use holistically, so you can use evidence that can be used to support more than one KS or B, and it's more on the quality of the evidence as opposed to the quantity of it. Some examples of evidence sources that you may want to include, but remembering that the list is not definitive, and there are other alternative evidence sources that you or your learners may also wish to include. And this is all taken from the apprenticeship standard. This isn't sort of Sitting Guilds perspective. This is direct from the apprenticeship standard. What you can't do, though, is use learner reflective accounts or self-assessment. Employee contributions must focus on observation and not an opinion, and evidence must be valid and attributable to the apprentice within a statement from the employer and apprentice to confirm this. And as always, the EPOs will not assess or verify or quality assure any of the evidence portfolio in this instance. So there's no on-programme qualification anymore. So the EPO will not, ourselves Sitting Guilds will not verify or quality assure the portfolios of evidence. So the new assessment plan, there's a link on the slide deck as well that will take you straight to the assessment plan. And again, going back to the 3 methods of the knowledge exam, the practical, the questions, and the interview. So looking at the knowledge exam, it's controlled and invigilated. It's closed book, multi-choice. There are 40 questions. Learners have 60 minutes, and it's graded fail, pass, or distinction. Also within the assessment plan, it states that the apprentice must be given at least 14 days notice of the date of the multiple choice test. Moving on to the practical assessment. So this is, as it always has been, it's IEPA assessor observed. Now this can take place in your centre, or if need be, you can also have this taken in the workplace, but it is your responsibility to ensure that all the activities can take place. The practical assessment is now 10 hours over 2 days, and during that period of time, there'll be a minimum of 10 questions asked as well. The practical assessment is graded fail, pass or distinction. And there is a list of the activities that will be included, such as plumbing, carpentry, joinery, plastering, paint and decorating and tiling. Learners must be able to plan their work, identify and solve the maintenance problems, and select and use the power tools and the hand tools, as they always have done. And as is so important with this apprenticeship standard, housekeeping is imperative to this apprenticeship standard and EPA. With regards to the interview, and this is underpinned by the portfolio of evidence. So if you've been used to the previous construction EPAs and apprenticeships, this will be sort of quite familiar to you. Now, this will be delivered by our IEPAs again, and apology using the term IEPAs, it's the Independent Endpoint Assessor, and that'll be done virtually. There'll be 14 days notice of the interview, and the assessor will ask 10 questions. It'll last for approximately 60 minutes, but it can be increased by 10% if required. And this is also fail, pass or distinction. And on the screen there is just some of the themes that can be taken and that will be discussed during the interview. So how is the grade? Because this apprenticeship standard is now graded pass, merit, fail, pass, merit, distinction, whereas the individual assessments are only graded fail, pass or distinction. So they've included the merit in this instance. So I'm going to look at the overall grading shortly, but just to go back to the multi-choice question tests, with regards to passing, learners must achieve a minimum of 28, and to achieve a distinction, they must get a minimum of 30 questions or 30 marks, and that will determine which grades the learners get. Those grades then contribute to the overall grade, as does the interview and the practical. And on screen there, you see the different combination of individual grades and how they contribute to an overall grade. And just for one instance, I'm going to pick out, if you look at line 5, you'll see that the practical has been graded a distinction, but the interview has been graded a pass, and so is the multi-choice question test. And that overall has come out at a merit. If you go a little bit further down, you see that the practical in the interview has been graded as a pass, and the multi-choice question test has been graded a distinction, but overall that is aligned to a pass grade. And the reason behind that is the weighting that is aligned to each assessment method, and they're all different. It's not sort of 33.3% equally. They all have different weightings. And obviously, as you can imagine, the practical is weighted the heaviest, so quite often that will influence a lot of grades, such as the line below where it's got a pass for the practical, 2 distinctions equals a merit. So that, you know, there is a lot of weighting applied to the practical. I hope that's sort of self-explanatory. That's taken again from the assessment plan on the iFate webpage for this apprenticeship standard. If anybody has any questions as well as we move along, please feel free to use the questions box, and we will try and cover them as best we can towards the end of the webinar. With regards to resits and retakes, if a learner fails one or more methods of the assessment, they only have to resit or retake that actual component. So if it's the practical, they just retake the practical. If it's the interview, they just retake the interview, question test and so on. So with regards to the resits and retakes, the difference is whether there's further learning needed. If the learner has been very close to passing the EPA and doesn't need any further learning, then ultimately it will be a resit. If the learner does require further learning to take place, then it will be a retake. And what there should be in place is that action plans are put in place for that learner that needs to retake. A resit is typically completed within 2 months of the EPA outcome, and a retake within 4 months. If a field assessment hasn't been completed within the 6-month period after the first EPA, then it will be taken in full again. They would have to resit every element. And the learner cannot resit or retake in order to improve on a pass grade. So just to sort of bear that in mind as well. So what are the key differences between the two apprenticeship standards? Also, I've already touched on this quite lightly throughout the webinar, but just to give you a bit more detail, the duration has increased. It's actually doubled from 12 to 24 months. With that, the funding has increased. Unfortunately, that hasn't doubled, but yeah, that's increased by £5,000 from £9,000 to £14,000. So still, as an apprenticeship standard, it is quite lucrative for centres to be considering this apprenticeship when you compare it to others. With regards to Gateway, you have your maths and English as before, but also it's now a portfolio of evidence as opposed to the level 2 diploma. Previously, version 1 did not have duties aligned to the apprenticeship standard, where there has been included 14 duties in the new version. There's 31 knowledge elements, 25 skills, so we've seen an increase in those areas, but we've actually seen a decrease in the behaviours area. That's gone from 15 down to 6. The interpersonal skills that were also listed, they've also been removed from the new apprenticeship standard. And as we've just reviewed, the grading is now fail, pass, merit distinction, as opposed to fail, pass distinction as it was previously. With regards to the actual assessments or the assessment days, so this is focusing on the practical, it was previously 5 hours which would take place on one day, and that would also include the interview. So the interview will be conducted after the practical assessment. Now it's moving to a 2-day practical assessment, which will be completed over 10 hours, and that doesn't include the interview. So the interview will take place separate from the 2-day practical assessment. So just some things to consider. So that's kind of the majority of the content I wanted to cover with regards to this apprenticeship standard and the new one that's since been launched on the 3rd of January. Just to go through some support and what resources are available. Surrounding you guys is a wealth of support that's unrivaled by any other AO or EPO, and that's just a short snippet of some of the things that we do at City and Guilds to support you. Myself and my colleagues as technical advisors and industry managers are there. We can host events for you. We can come out and do stuff with your staff. We can support in face-to-face as opposed to virtual. Whatever you need, please just get in touch and we will try our very best to support you moving forward. Another thing to bear in mind is we are going to have smart screen resources for this apprenticeship standard. They didn't have them for the previous property maintenance, but there will be support resources available for this apprenticeship standard. They're not available yet, unfortunately, but they will be available for tutors to utilise for delivery. There'll also be an apprentice training manual available for this apprenticeship standard, and that will also be available on Smart Screen, and those have been massively popular in the other construction trades. And as always, you've got the support of Hodder Education that provide you with the range of textbooks to support delivery. Unfortunately, there isn't a textbook bespoke for property maintenance, but they do have them for their main trades, so you may be able to utilise content from within them to support delivery. And just by way of a prompt, really, there are some Smart Screen resources already available that may be useful to deliver this new apprenticeship. And they are the maintenance ops, which is qualification number 6711, construction skills, the famous 6219, and then you have your plumbing and electrical 6704 and 2365. So those Smart Screen resources are available to purchase if you wish to. Like I mentioned, there will be Smart Screen resources coming for the property maintenance. Those are actually in development. And if you want to be involved, I've got some information that I'll share with you further in the webinar, and you can be involved in this process. As I mentioned, Hodder Education do a huge range of textbooks now across different trades, different qualification types. So we have them for Wales, we have them for T-levels, and they also have them for their main trades. We have a contact at Hodder Education, and that is Gemma Simpson. So please feel free to get in touch with Gemma if you wish to review or have a look at any of the textbooks that they have on offer. as I mentioned previously, you can get involved. There's many opportunity to work with sitting guilds and get involved in the development of the qualifications and products that we offer. Please do declare your interest with us, and when required, we can be in touch, and you can be involved in it could be the development of resources, development and reviewing some of the qualifications, or scrutineering, whichever role. These are different from the associate roles that you have to apply for, such as the LEPA roles, IEPAs and EQAs. These are different. These are working with our development and assessment team and DLR team on the front end of the product, so making sure that you can influence and have input into that. And if it's not yourself directly, you may wish to share that with colleagues. That's it for the presentation and the webinar as such. I am going to pause now for a couple of minutes, which will allow people to put any questions that they may have in the questions tab, and from them we'll answer them as best we can. If you'd like me to cover anything else, please do let me know. We've had a couple of questions come in. One is around, are sitting guilds going to provide any physical exam centres where practical EPA can be sat? That is in review. So I cannot say for sure 100%, but that is one of the things that we are looking at. So please bear with us with that one, but it is on the sitting guilds pipeline to offer that as a service as opposed to the assessor only model. With regards to Smart Screen, at the minute, with regards to the resources for that, I have been given a date of autumn 2023. But again, if we do get many more consultants, then obviously that process can be sped up and we'll get resources to people a lot sooner. The only specific question was around plastering within the practical element. Has that always been there? Yes, practical has always been there. It was in the previous version and it is in this version also. Will the new EPA base be similar to the current version 1.0? They will be similar. They won't be exactly the same, but they will be similar. But we will be providing some guidance on that as well once the EPAs have been fully developed. So please do keep an eye out for that. Yeah, I've just answered that question as well. Will the current assessment base we are using be sufficient for the 2-day? So yeah, there'll be, as with all the other construction EPAs, we'll provide some centre guidance and some EPA packs that you can use with regards to your setup, etc. for the EPAs. Yes, this overview of requirements is the same for all EPOs because we all are governed by the same assessment plan and the same quality assurance organisation for this apprenticeship standard, which is Ofqual. So we have to abide by that that assessment plan. No problem. I can't share the email contacts of attendees, unfortunately, due to GDPR, etc. What I would invite you to do is join our group on LinkedIn. And if you give me 1 second, I will see if I can put the link in the chat. And by doing that, then attendees and people on the call can share their details if they wish, but I certainly cannot share any contact details of attendees, unfortunately or fortunately. As soon as we have the recording, yeah, the recording will go on YouTube, so we'll share it with you via a link. It'll also go into the LinkedIn page, and we'll probably share it via a email alert also for those that haven't been able to attend. Keep an eye out as well, because we may do some networks on the new PMO where we hit your regions, or if you'd like any sort of centre one-to-one support, what I can give you is my email address, which I am just now putting in the chat. Sorry, I cannot do two things at once. So my email address is in the chat. If you do need anything, please don't hesitate to get in touch. I'm just about to get the construction group on LinkedIn. Again, please do join the group. How relevant will the information contain be? Just a quick question around the use of BSI Flex V30. How relevant will the information contained be to the course? I'm not sure what your question is sort of referring to, really. I can try and pick that up with you offline, though, if you wish, if there's more to pick up on that. Thank you. Yeah, I'll just put a couple of links in the chat there. So well, not links. One is my email address. The other one is a link to the construction page on LinkedIn. So please do feel free to join us on there if you are on LinkedIn, and if you want to network with others, it's the perfect platform to do that. All right, I see now. I see. With regards to how thorough you need to be on certain topics, on certain aspects contained within the apprenticeship standard, what you've got is the duties that are aligned to the KSBs, which are aligned to the duties. So the duties is kind of like the outlay, and then the KSBs go into what level of detail you need to cover within that. So, but what you've got to realise and remember is these learners are maintenance learners. So just please bear that in mind when you are covering the content that's contained within this apprenticeship standard. You know, they're not tradespeople, they're not electricians, they're not plumbers, they are maintenance operatives. So with regards to the level of detail, you know, just please bear that in mind, because essentially we have the same level of detail to create the assessments the same as what you guys have. So we have essentially the EPA plan and the assessment plan. I know that might not have covered that question for you, but I am going to take that offline if that's okay, and I'll come back to you on that question. If you haven't already visited the Institute's website or on this new apprenticeship standard, I will also put that link in the chat. The Institute have actually changed their web pages, so there's like a blue bar that goes across the middle of the screen, and by clicking on that you get the individual parts. Unfortunately, I was scrolling for ages when this first came out to try and navigate my way throughout it, but eventually figured it out. And then you have quick links that you can click onto as well to access certain parts of the apprenticeship standard also. So I've put that link in the chat as well. There doesn't seem to be many other questions coming through. I hope you have found that webinar useful. I know it was quite short and sweet. It's only been 30 minutes. I didn't want to take up too much of everybody's lunchtime. But I hope you have found it useful. Again, if you've got any questions on anything to do with property maintenance or anything for construction in the built environment, please do let us know. As I said previously, if you're interested in being involved, or you know colleagues that are interested in being involved in supporting the development of not just property maintenance, but the whole range of construction qualifications, then please do scan the QR code on the screen. I'll also put a link in the chat to this particular document, and you and your colleagues can certainly declare their interest and work with us. I'm just getting the link now, which is now in the chat. Thank you so much to everyone for attending today. As soon as the recording is ready, I will email that to everybody along with a copy of the slide deck. You've all got my email address. Please do get in touch. Join us on LinkedIn, and I'll hope to see as many of you as possible in the future. If you'd like me to come in and visit your centre or a range of centres in your region, we can certainly arrange that. And I hope you all stay safe and well. I hope you have a great summer when I think it's just about getting here. It's starting to warm up a little bit. I hope you have a great summer break ready for next year. In the meantime, if you need anything, honestly, please don't hesitate to get in touch. I really appreciate you all attending today. I know how busy you guys all are. Thank you so much. And yes, please do get in touch if I can help. Take care now.